What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This right here, as you should all know by now, is the podcast where we dive into the deep, dark, murky waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, of course, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. I'd like to think that Pops is very proud of me, very proud that I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got a million fans because I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Boppa Loo Boppa Wop Bam Bam Shazam. Hot damn. Oh, I'm feeling good. And even better, I am looking good. Pops, you are too. Everybody in the house. For me, you know how I get it done, kids. A little product placement right here. Boom. There it is. You can look this good too. Well, maybe not this good, but coming to you as always from the Lavender Lounge of Love. God damn it. This place is my utopia, my paradise. And of course, I am joined, as always, by my right-hand man, the legendary Keith Hernandez Puppet, who doesn't say much, but when he does, it's poignant and important. And we are, of course, bringing you the No Frills podcast. You don't get no frills because we don't know how to give them to you, but we can give you thrills. And that is looking at the face of a rock star. As you all know, the second greatest frontman to ever do this rock and roll thing. The hardest working man in show business right here. And today we got ourselves a good one. Let me remind you first, if you're watching us, please like and subscribe, and be sure to check us out on Facebook. That's right, Pod Scum is on Facebook. You got to be these days. But I digress. Our guest is here. I'm excited about this one. Going to be super brutal. Let's get him in here and chop it up on Pod Scum. And there he is. Look at that. Thank God for technology. I'm glad we did a test run though. That's probably a good idea. You know, I mean,
yeah.
especially if there's any doubts. Tobias CRISTIANSSON. I guess. I mean, you know, you're in multiple bands, man. But is there one that you identify with the most? Obviously, the most recent thing is Darkened.
Yeah. Well, I think Grave is a band that I've been in the longest. I joined Grave in 2010. So
Legends.
yeah, so that feels like my steady band. But I also kind of recently joined Necrophobic, so
Okay.
I'm doing those two simultaneously. And like you said, I have Darkened as well, which Darkened is like it's a studio project. So we're not a live band.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Grave, obviously, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, been a while since they've put out any new music, or no? Am I wrong about that?
No, that's correct. The last record that we did was in 2015. Was called Out of Respect for the Dead.
Yep.
So that's quite a few years, but it's been getting tough to get everything together. And then also during the pandemic, we kind of lost the momentum a little bit. So.
Yeah.
But we're right now we're picking it up and doing gigs again, so that's really nice, you know, to meet up and play like the same unit. So
yeah.
So I actually I don't know if we don't have any plans for an actual recording. We have done like demos and stuff, but that was even before the pandemic. So. I don't know. Maybe we'll pick up on those and you know go forward with the demos that we did in what was that 2019 or something like that. So we'll see what happened. But for now, we're focusing on the gigs mainly.
Yeah, and now Ola, of course, started that band way back. I mean, you know, Grave has certainly been on the death metal scene a long time. How do you get tapped to end up in that band?
Well, yeah, Ola is one of the dinosaurs of death metal here in Sweden. he kind of he was probably one of the first guys that played extreme metal ever in Sweden.
Yeah.
I mean, even before Grave, they had a band called Corpse,
Yep.
which was more like a extreme thrash metal band, maybe in the Creator vein. So they've been doing it for a long time. But I first met up with Ola when I was playing in Dismember, and we did a couple of tours together. Like the first tour we did was in 2006. Was a US tour actually with Dismember, Grave, and Vital Remains. So we shared a bus, and later we did European tours, and and then it happened like the bass player at the time, he was not available for a gig in Mexico in 2009. So Ula asked me, because we already were friends, and he knew that I could probably pull it off. So I learned a set, but at that time it was just a one-off thing. Then maybe a year later, the bass player left the band. So I think the obvious choice was to ask me, because I already done it. They knew that I was capable. So yeah, and then that was 2010. My first gig was in Colombia, in South America. So that was a nice, cool experience.
They love their metal down there. They love their metal.
Oh, fuck yeah. I mean, South American people is like one of the best audience to play for, like no doubt. So so that's always cool to be there. I've been there a couple of times, so it's very nice.
Now, obviously, when you're a kid, and I obviously don't know about your upbringing, but how early on, did you get an instrument in your hand, or know that you wanted to be a musician? Did you have aspirations to do anything else?
Well, at first I was just a music fan. When I was really young, I got into metal when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old in the 80s. So listening to the radio show that we had here in Sweden was just one radio show, and every Saturday I was in front of the radio taping it. So I had like a bunch of cassette tapes. So later on, when I became a teenager, I wanted to play in a band, but I didn't have anybody to play with. But one time in school, there was a guy that approached me and said, like, I know you like heavy metal and you look the part, so please join our band. And I was like, but I can't play anything. And he's like, doesn't matter, we teach you. So I was like, man, this is great, So
he's got a really good grasp on the rock and roll. You look the part, never mind about the playing.
Actually, yeah. That was actually why they came up and asked me, because they thought I had started to grow my hair long, so I'm lucky for that. So I played, it was a garage band, playing covers and a few originals, and so I started off playing bass right from the start, because I know a lot of people, everybody wants to be the guitar player, but the one who is, the least good always end up playing the bass.
Yeah. So was it? So was the bass your first choice, or did you just kind of end up the bass like just by default because nobody else was playing it?
No, it was just because these guys that asked me, they needed a bass player. So that was my first thing. And I bought a bass a few months after. And so it was until maybe a few years later that I picked up a guitar and tried to learn that as well. But I started off bass, playing with my fingers. Yeah, but I didn't take any. Well, I did take lessons at school. I went to the music teacher. I was like, now, I started to play bass. I should probably get a little bit better. So our music teacher, set me up with a private lesson. He was playing the piano, and he was starting up with his songs. Like, he wanted me to play House of the Rising Sun, some other pop songs, and I was like, no, fuck this. I wanna I want to play Slayer. I don't need to learn that stuff, you know. So I quit after one lesson. I didn't like the music, and I couldn't at that time. I couldn't see what that could give me.
Right.
So it took me a few years before I actually understood, like, if even if you learn other music, you can, you know, take that knowledge into playing metal. So
it's probably hard to find a good music teacher in school that's going to embrace teaching the students Slayer. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't. You know, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? It's unless you get that really rare, super fucking cool music teacher who gets it. But I mean, a lot of people aren't. So when you get into extreme metal, do you remember the first act or song or album that really resonated with you? That really got you know, that really got you infectious about extreme metal?
Yeah, well, again, it was from the radio here in Sweden, because I lived, you know, a little bit outside of Stockholm in a suburb. So I was listening to the radio, and this is the early 90s. I was still quite young, like 13, 14 years old. And they were starting to play all the new bands. It could be anything from, I don't know, Pantera, Alice in Chains, all the stuff that was coming in the early 90s. And they were playing also Entombed, Morbid Angel, Death, you know, all the bands. So it was like, wow, this is a new sound. I was like, this is like a new world opening. So the first band that really got me was Entombed, and later on Dismember as well.
Yeah.
So I started with a Swedish band, and then later, you know, explored.
And ironically, you ended up a member of both of those bands.
Yeah, I mean, that's so bizarre, isn't it? You know,
mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, man. That's why Sweden right there is the home of death metal, man. And I tried to put a finger on this. I had Tobias Gustafsson on from Vomitory. I've had other guys on, and it's always a geographical thing. And I'm always wondering, you know, because obviously here in the States we have a great death metal scene in Florida. And Sweden has always had a rich history of death metal, and I'm always trying to put my finger on why. I think Tobias from Vomitory kind of chalked it up to bad weather and everybody being kind of fucking brooding and angry or whatever, but we couldn't really put a finger on it. But now you're telling me you could turn on a radio in fucking Sweden and hear Entombed? I give up. That's why the United States is. That's why the United States isn't as metal as fucking Sweden. We don't get that on the radio.
No, and also I think here they are always being very generous with providing rehearsal rooms for, you know, at a very, very cheap price for young kids. Also, the music school here has been very pivotal, I think, for people at least starting to pick up an instrument and getting, you know, a start.
Right.
But I don't know. There was like a small bunch of people, mainly in Stockholm, that started the whole scene, you know, Entombed, Dismember, well, Nihilists, as they were called before. And it's hard to say. I have no idea. But there was a few really, really creative people there that were driven, starting to look for new stuff. And obviously they were listening to the Florida bands, and they're the ones that came really early, trading cassettes and stuff, which sparked something up. And then I guess they were like, we can also start bands. And they were here in Sweden, you can, at that time at least, you can get a lot of gigs at youth centers.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, these non-alcoholic events for really young people, you know, they were young teenagers. So all the bands were starting very early to play live at these youth clubs. So but in the beginning it was just a small circle of people, and somehow they created something really original that stood out from the rest of the world. And it's really fascinating.
And are you a guy who writes lyrics, or do you just concentrate mostly on music? Well,
I've been doing a little bit of lyric writing. I'm not like a great poet. So I did a little bit in Dismember, but not much.
But what's your creative process like when you're going to write something? Are you because I always notice when I talk to musicians on here, there's kind of two trains of thought. There's those guys who are kind of getting creativity like throughout the day, and they're humming riffs into their phone or they're jotting stuff down. And then there's people that are very disciplined and they approach it like a job. Like, okay, for the next 5 hours, I'm going to go in this room and I'm going to write. Are you one of those two people? Oh, you know, which one are you?
Usually it comes a little bit more spontaneous for me.
Yeah.
Because right now I haven't been written anything in a long time, but so it comes in chunks, maybe like for a few months, and then I write quite frequently.
Yeah.
But usually if I write riffs, I do it on an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
So I figured if it can sound good on an acoustic guitar, it will also probably sound good with a distorted.
Yeah, if you're making an acoustic guitar, if you're making an acoustic guitar sound heavy, it's probably going to be heavy when you plug into something.
yeah, exactly.
And what about? Oh, go ahead.
And sometimes I write, you know, even on a regular tuned guitar, it's not even down tuned. It sounds a little bit more thrashy that way. But when you you know plug in with distortion, down tune it, it will, you know, have another dimension to it. So
and what was COVID like for you and or your musical projects? Like obviously 2020, a couple of years ago, the plug gets pulled on so much shit. Nobody's able to play live. You know, the world is kind of turned upside down. What did you have, you know, if you can go back in time to like 2020 when all that shit started, you know, how did that affect what you were doing personally at that time? Did it derail a lot of plans? Did it sidetrack anything?
Yeah, well, for Gray, we had a lot of gigs that was supposed to come during 2020.
Yeah.
So we did one, the last gig we did was, I don't know, February, something like that. And then we were supposed to have all the festival stuff coming up. So we figured like, well, it will probably just be the summer, maybe the autumn as well. But, you know, it will pick up again being normal, but it didn't, you know?
Yeah.
So the first 6 months was okay. You know, it was kind of nice to have a break, but after those 6 months, it was becoming really boring. And because I always like to have that spark in my life where I can go out, fly to another country, play a show. It fills you up with energy that you bring back home. And when I suddenly lost it for those years, it was horrible actually.
Yeah.
But a good thing that happened during COVID was that I was approached by Darkened, and they asked me if I wanted to record an album just 1 month later. So that, well, at least that was a good thing. I joined a new band, and I recorded my bass at home. So it was, you know, I didn't need to go anywhere, you know, rehearse or anything. You could just stay at home, do that. So that was one good thing that came out of it. I also did like a few collaborations, like this COVID video things with playing some cover songs, and another a few projects that came up along the way. So that was also, you know, cool to do something really different like that. I think what it did happen was like a lot of bands could learn how to use and promote their stuff on the internet even more, you know, to make small videos and stuff, you know, because a lot of people were like, okay, what to do with all the creativity. So they found new way to do that. So that was good, but I have to say it was really boring to just be home without the gigs. So I'm glad it's back to normal. It feels great.
And now you said Darkened is just a studio band. Explain what you mean by that, and why this band is not going to play in a live setting.
Well, for me personally, I could play live, but we have the main composer of this band, Hempa. He says like, oh, I don't want to play live. It doesn't like give me anything. His creative output is to sit at home in his home studio, record first, like you do create the songs and then record everything, and so that's where he get his excitement from. Also, we have the singer Gord. He's a Canadian guy. He lives in Canada. He's also not very keen of doing live gigs, he said. So we have two people that are not very like into going on stage, whereas for me personally, that's where
you love it.
Feel, yeah, I love it. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's nice to have Darkened as a project where we just record stuff. And, you know, sometimes we meet and have dinner together, but the work that we're doing is like we do at home. We don't even rehearse as a band, or so it's nice to have that, because it doesn't like take so much time for me, because I don't know if I could have more bands that are doing live shows.
Right. It's only 24 hours in a day. I mean,
yeah, no. And I have a day job as well, so I need to, you know,
me too.
Do that.
Seems to get that pesky day job seems to get in the way of everything.
Yeah, I know. I want to rock out 24/7 if I could.
And as a speaking from a fan standpoint, you've been doing this a long time, so I like to word it a little differently with guys that have been doing it a long time. I hate to say who are your influences, so to word it a different way, as a bass player, who are some guys as a fan who's playing you really are a fan of?
Well, in my early age, it was maybe Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Cliff Burton. I watched that Cliff and All video all the time when I was a kid. You had it on VHS cassette, and so that was an inspiration. And later on, maybe guys like Steve DiGiorgio, Billy Sheehan. I can have influences from all sorts of music as well, like old rhythm and blues, funk music from the 70s.
Sure.
Like groovy stuff. Also, I like a lot of 70s hard rock stuff like that, where a lot of times the bass are very prominent. Like in the songs, they get a lot of space to. So I like that. So, but today there's so many like incredible bass players. Like they do all the tapping stuff. It's like wow.
and for you, you're out traveling a lot. You're doing a lot of shows. Is death metal going forward, extreme metal, death metal, whatever you want to call it, going forward? Is it in good hands? Are you seeing a lot of good, young, up-and-coming death metal bands? And are there any that stand out to you?
Well, at some shows, lately, you can see like it's almost like a family thing. You have the old guys, and maybe they're bringing the kids who are young teenagers.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool. I really like when you see young people coming as fans to the shows.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see a future there, so for sure. And also here in Sweden, there's been a growing underground scene with younger bands coming up. Like we have one band in Sweden called Eternal Evil. They are a little bit more in the thrash vein, but they are like 19 years old. But really skilled musicians as well. But they play like a really fast-paced thrash metal. So that's cool. But I'm not the best person to keep on track what's new in the scene, unfortunately. I'm a little bit stuck in my old
you know what I appreciate the honesty of you saying that, because until I started really doing this podcast, that's how my listening habits are too. And it's nice now, because now that I'm doing the podcast, I like giving like younger bands, it's always great to talk to legends on here and people that have been doing it a long time, but it is nice to get, to kind of lend a platform to younger bands. And until I started doing this about a year ago, I was the same way. And I still am a little bit. Like when I'm going to listen to music for my own enjoyment, I do tend to fall back on the shit that I grew up on. I mean, I'm 50 years old. So, if I'm going to listen to music, as opposed to going and finding like a good new young band. I'll go back and listen to Master of Puppets or old shit like that. You know what I mean? And I'm trying not to be that old 50-year-old guy who's just very cynical and just won't listen to anything new. But it's hard because there's such an influx of music out there. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, especially these days, there are so many bands. Like when you were younger, you could almost keep track on most bands that were releasing records.
Yeah.
But now there's like so many stuff going. There's so many bands and so many subgenres and stuff. So it's difficult to keep track on everything. And maybe for me personally, I got my kicks out of music when I was younger. These days, if I hear something new, I can enjoy it.
Right.
But it doesn't affect me like in a deep way. Which is I wish I was like that, but
I know. It's hard. It's hard. I think because we might be a little jaded because you know you get to a certain age and you feel like, you know, wow, like what haven't I heard yet? You know, you got to really bowl me over. You know what I mean? Because I feel like you've heard so much great music already. You know, I mean, it's hard to be. That's not taking away anything from from any young artists that are out there doing their thing. But it is hard when you've heard, as you mentioned, the Cliff Burtons of the world and the Slayers and the we're kind of spoiled. You know?
Yeah. But I like to also find older bands that I missed out on.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that I maybe are doing more, like trying to search for something that I haven't heard. Maybe there's a record that I missed out, because when I was young, it was more of record could like go by me because maybe my friends didn't buy it, maybe I didn't see the ads in the papers or whatever it was. It was more of a luck, or so there's still like older bands to discover, like maybe a bit more obscure releases and stuff like that. So I've been doing maybe more like that, and also I broadened my musical taste these days. So there's a lot of things to listen to, I think.
Yeah, see, that was harder to do back when I was growing up. You talk about the broadening your musical taste, because then if you were caught going outside the genre, you were the dreaded poser back then. You could never you could never be caught listening to anything non-metal back when I was growing up. I mean, it was a death sentence,
And I was one of the worst music polices in my group. It was so strict for me. Like if you didn't listen to this or that, you could go home.
Ostracized.
I was terrible, and I would say it up front as well. But now, I mellow down a lot. So it's just nice if somebody can, come up with, something completely different. I'm really open-minded these days. But back when I was young, I was. I remember one thing, like I had for some reason I had a back patch in my drawer with Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And me and two friends were at home, and I was listening only to death metal. Like if somebody was singing in a clean voice, I didn't listen to it. And my friend said, "But hey, I know you have a Guns N' Roses back patch in your drawer." And I was like, "Yeah, but look at this. This is how much I hate them." And I fucking ripped it apart just to prove myself, like, which is ridiculous,
God, the things we did when we were young had to prove ourselves. Absolutely crazy. And and as I mentioned, though, you've had the great fortune, though, of being over there in Sweden and being in Grave, Dismember, Entombed AD, some very legendary Swedish bands. Talk to me a little bit about your time in Entombed AD. You had to be working alongside of Lars Goran Petrov, correct?
Yeah,
legend.
Yeah, he's amazing. And
rest in
was
peace.
also,
rest in peace. One of the true great death metal voices of all time.
Yeah, it's actually it's so sad that he's gone now, and it's also very weird because he was very like a driving force always wanted to go forward, always wanted to tour, do gigs all the time.
Yeah.
So it's very unfair, you know. He was not going to quit any day soon.
Right.
So yeah. But anyhow, it happened when the previous bass player, Victor, that had been playing with Entombed and for almost 10 years, he left the band because he joined Dimmu Borgir. So they didn't have a bass player. So Victor actually he said to the guys that they should contact me, and they did. And I was like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I already knew the guys before because we toured together. You know, we meet in Stockholm at gigs and stuff. So I knew them for quite some time already. So it wasn't anything new. And again, they knew that I was probably capable of playing. So yeah, they asked me. I learned the songs. We did, you know, a bunch of gigs together, which was, I remember, you know, sometimes at stage I was playing these songs that I had been listening to in my parents' house, in my little room on my stereo, and here I am on a big stage playing them, and I looked to my side and there was LG singing it. It was like, I had to pinch myself. This is awesome, you know. I'm very grateful for that. So
yeah, and it's not so bad looking over and seeing Ola either. I mean,
no, exactly.
You know, that's pretty great company. Do you ever wish though, you know, do you ever have like the notion that you would like to be that you would like to see Grave maybe do more albums and be more active in the recording studio?
Yeah, of course, that would be nice, you know, to do another album, do a proper tour. We haven't been doing like a long tour for a few years either. So now we're just mainly doing one-off shows, festival gigs, which, I mean, we get a lot of good gigs like all over the world. So I'm happy for that because it seems like Grave is still a relevant band to book.
Very, yeah.
And we draw a good amount of audience as well. So I'm really happy and grateful for that. But of course, it would be nice to do another album, which I think we could. It's not that we can't do it anymore, but it just takes a certain amount of organization, get everybody together, writing together. I know Ola has this like old school mentality that he wants to meet in the rehearsal room and everybody brings the ideas and we try out things.
Yeah.
He's not the type of guy that could do everything like you know, everybody sits at their home and sending files back and forth and then we just like piece it together, because he wants to meet up everybody together, play together like a band. So which is something that I think is really, it's cool. And I don't know, not many bands are doing that today. So because it's so easy just to send files with. So I totally understand that. Also these days, whenever most people have family, a lot of people have kids, you know, it's hard to hang out in the rehearsal rooms several days a week, like you used to.
Yeah. How does that affect you guys? How does that affect your itinerary touring though? Because you did make a good point right there. You know, as you get older, you know, the narrative in your life changes. You might have kids or a significant other, or, you know, maybe a day job, as you mentioned, that doesn't allow you afford you the luxury of being able to travel a lot or take a lot of time off. How is that situation like for you personally? Like, you know, is there a set amount of time, you know, that you can extend yourself to go out and tour?
Well, I could basically do a tour like anytime. At this point, I'm single again, so I don't have like somebody to like ask for permission or whatever. So
spoken like a guy that's been in a few long-term relationships. Permission, that's the right word, probably.
yeah. So I could do it. Also, like the other guys in Grave, their kids are getting older now, so maybe it was tougher a few years ago.
Yeah.
But for example, if I go away, sometimes I need to take vacation from my job to do that. But
Yeah.
so it's very rare that I have a long normal type of vacation where I have a couple of weeks off just relaxing. It's more like I use my vacation days if I need to travel.
Yeah.
For me, it's totally worth it because that's what I love to do. It gives me a lot of joy and a good energy, good feeling. So I have no problems with that. But I know, like for example, if you have like young kids, I know it's not really possible to just like travel and be away from home. You have to have a really understanding partner to do that. So
yeah, you don't want to come. Yeah, you don't want to come home and find that the kids are all grown up and you missed it all. That's kind of a bummer.
yeah, exactly.
So talk to me a little bit about this EP that you got that Darkened put out in 2023. I was listening to it today in anticipation of our conversation. Lord of Sickness and Bile. Wow, fucking amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
it turned out good, and I think that we'll have a bunch of tracks that will be eventually recorded as a full-length album, and so we released this EP like building up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think like you can just listen to it on YouTube or something because it's not out in a physical form yet. So I haven't even got my copy of it.
Yeah.
But we will release it like a vinyl 7-inch. That's the release that will come out. And then we're gonna record more songs and put out a full-length album. Maybe that will be out early next year. And I can say like the new songs are maybe a little bit more melodic than the previous ones.
Yeah.
A bit more diverse. You still have that old school, riffing stuff, but mixed up with a little bit more melodies here and there. So yeah, it's gonna be good.
And do you think about, being that at this point, Darkened is just a studio band right now, and obviously, as we talked about, the music business has changed so much. There's such an influx of music being created every single day. Do you worry about how fast, you get new material out? Because it seems like nowadays, especially with people going back to releasing singles, it seems like, with people's dwindling attention spans, it feels like the bands really want to stay on people's mind and stay relevant. When you put something like this out, do you already start thinking about how fast we got to get new music out again and follow this up?
Yeah, well, we actually been having that kind of discussion within the band, like because Hempa, who is writing the material, he's very fast. He had his songs ready like 6 months ago and said like, yeah, let's put it out right now. But then we were discussing it and we were thinking like, well, maybe we can, we don't need to rush it,
right?
Really. So this time we were taking it a little bit slower than we intentionally were thinking about doing. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like you always need to be like on top of your game and be relevant and have something to show and something to put out. So because like we were talking about before, there's so many bands. It's easy to get lost with all the releases that are coming out these days. So.
Yeah, someone told me the other day some staggering number, like 60,000 new songs a day are being put up on these platforms. Songs.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
Crazy.
It's nuts. Speaking to the point earlier about going out and listening to new music, it's quite a daunting task if you were to go out there and explore new music because there's so goddamn much of it. I mean,
it's crazy. I'm reading like a metal magazine here in Sweden that comes out every month. So I try to keep track of what's going on. But also there is still a lot of focus on the old bands So
thank God.
I mean, if you read a music magazine, there's most of the time there's an old band on the cover, because that's what still draws more attention than a young up and coming band that usually gets like a little spot in the yeah, exactly. So so it's tough. It's tough for a new band to get attention.
Very.
Unfortunately, some bands are really good and talented, and I really hope that more bands could get picked up and by bigger bands, maybe doing gigs and tours and stuff like that. So they also have the share of the spotlight, which I think would be fair. So it's not always the older bands that are, keeping the ground. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, I know we talked earlier offline. You were a little bit under the weather and not feeling good, man. So, I appreciate you giving me some time here, man. This has been really fun getting the chance to talk with you. I'm glad we finally got this squared away and we were able to do it, man. It's really been a pleasure getting the chance to talk to you. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I've been having a lot of stuff going on. I recently moved to a new apartment, so it's still stuff to take care of here.
Yeah.
And then, like just a few days ago, I had this fever, and I felt like, oh fuck, I feel really bad. But luckily, today I was starting to feel a little bit better. So.
Good.
So because we have a gig with Grave coming up this weekend, we're going to the Netherlands to play.
Nice.
Play a festival there, so it will be Grave, Marduk, Mayhem, and a few other bands. Yeah. So I hopefully I will feel good until the weekend, so I can rock out.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, brother, and I wish you safe travels, man. And for sure, keep in touch, and when something's going on, let's get on here and do it again.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tobias. I really appreciate it, brother. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take it easy, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Later.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
And there he goes, folks. That is Tobias Christiansson, bass player for Jesus Christ, man. He's hit the trifecta, man. I mean, he's been in fucking 3 big Swedish legendary death metal bands: Grave, Dismember, Entombed AD, still doing the Grave thing. Also doing, as you heard him say, a studio band that isn't going out on the road at this point, but the band is called Darkened. They put out an EP in 2023 called Lord of Sickness and Bile. Heavy as fuck, as you would expect any band from Sweden would be. Kick-ass fucking shit. Really kick-ass shit. And of course, goes without saying, I mean, his day job in a little death metal band called Grave. Huge pioneers of the Swedish death metal scene, still going strong and still doing their thing, man. And, talking with Tobias offline a little bit, as I mentioned, he's a little bit under the weather. Still super fucking cool for being willing to jump on here and chat it up with me for a little while. So that again is Tobias Christiansson, bass player for Grave, and for Darkened. Do go check out, well, of course, I mean, you're going to get your metalhead card pulled if you don't know Grave and you don't go familiarize yourself with them. But do go check out Darkened, heavy as fuck, as you would expect, and good shit. Maybe someday we'll see them out on the road, as you heard Tobias say. A couple of the guys not into the live thing, man. Studio project at this point, but fucking amazing songs. And as I said, heavy as fucking hell. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I want to thank Tobias Christiansson for coming on here and doing it. And remember, guys, until we get together and we do this thing again, please remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.